Welcome to the Stash Cast, where innovation meets real estate. Let's dive in.
Before we get into this, is a non-conventional sort of episode where I usually have a pre-call with my guests to discuss who they are, what they do, why it might be a good fit for the podcast. And in this case, I had a really in-depth conversation with this guest, Rob Greene, as part of the pre-call. And I think that it would be helpful to weave that in at the front of the podcast. So that's what I'm going to be doing. So the videos are going to be wearing different clothes, but I think it'll be helpful. I hope you enjoy the episode, and thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Thanks for joining me.
I'm in Asia, man. I'm between Kuala Lumpur and Bali, Indonesia. Doing the digital nomad thing, living off the laptop, hanging out in the islands, enjoying peaceful side of the world where it's not going crazy. I'm used to it. If I talk to people in the States, it's usually running a night shift. It's about 12 to 16 hours apart. I do it a couple of days a week. I was in the military for 6 years. I had some pretty crazy experiences. And then after that, I got out, and it took me almost 7 years to realize I had PTSD. Because there were some things I would do that would be absolutely crazy to everybody else, but normal to me or other military guys, because we're living in a different kind of culture than getting out and being around normal people.
Like what?
I've had chronic insomnia for the past 22 years. So like sleeping 1 hour a night or 2 hours a night, or not at all. We just write it off as a normal thing. Grab a couple cups of coffee, get some chewy tobacco, go about your business. Yeah, disciplining people. Like when I was working with teams or in corporate and someone would make a mistake, like in the military, everything's a life or death matter, right? Attention to detail, right? So they don't take kindly to mistakes, but in the corporate world, the intensity level wasn't as high. That was a bit of an adjustment, which actually got me fired from a job. I was in a really bad mood and I berated somebody verbally to the point he started crying. I got pulled into the office afterwards. That's not appropriate. You can't do that here. I'm sorry, but I have to let you go.
Yeah.
My breaking point was losing my father to suicide in 2013 after I was in the Philippines on a humanitarian aid mission. There was a super typhoon that ran through the Philippines in 2013 called Yolanda. And so rather than going home for Christmas to be with my dad, I decided to do a volunteer project in a medical mission to give out relief goods and set up a solar-powered Christmas tree in the middle of the destruction. The whole city was just in ruins. The typhoon winds were coming in at 230 kilometers an hour. Like the winds were so strong that the Filipino people had these little tin plated roofs, and they were getting thrown into trees like ninja stars. And so you'll see these big trees, and there's like a metal card that's a roof plate in the tree, like through it, like in one side and out the other.
Oh my gosh.
So you'd see like half bodies around the place, and it was a crazy scene, dude. By the time we got down there, it was 3 weeks after the typhoon. Food supplies were super limited. A lot of people were starving. Shelter, electricity. Some people had it, some people didn't. It was fucked. Like it was messed up.
Yeah.
And so that night I called my dad up and I was like, hey, this is what I'm doing. I'm sorry I can't come home. He said, son, you're more of a man than I'll ever be. I really love you and I'm proud of you. And the next day I got a phone call that he took up 38, put it to the side of his temple and blew his head off. So after coming back from that medical mission, I had to scramble together a ticket, then fly on New Year's Eve, going in from 2013 to 14 on a plane to go home to sort out this mess. That kind of broke me. That was tough, man. Going into my dad's apartment, my brother and sister couldn't handle it because the smell of death was still there. They're not used to that. So when my brother walked in, he vomited. My sister started crying. So walking into that scene where they had like a chalk outline where his body was and the brain matter still on the TV and a bullet hole, and part of the carpet was cut out because it was too bloody and messy. And having to go in there and see that really did it. But I still tried to hold it together. You're a man. You're an American man. You don't talk about your problems. You just carry on and get shit done, and you don't think about it, right? So that went on for another 2 years, but everything got progressively worse. I developed a super bad drinking problem. I got super into drugs. If I wasn't at my desk at work, I had to be on something. I couldn't just take being in my own body. I was in a relationship at the time that went down the shitter. I went on this weekend-long drinking and drug binge for 3 days. doing everything left, right, and center that I get my hands on. Then I get home. Then my ex was like, I don't think this is going to work out between us. You need help. You're toxic. I was like, all right, cool. Get out of here. I don't care. And I was wanting to go to bed, like whatever. And then I don't know what happened. And we got in a big argument and I lost it. And I was like, I don't want to live anymore. So I took my hunting knife out and I put it in my neck and I started to cut my own neck. Luckily, she tackled me into the wall, man. She's a pretty tall British girl. So she, I don't know, maybe the rugby. There was a hole in my wall. She ran me through a wall. Wow. So after that, I was like, all right, I need help, man. It's leaking everywhere. So I contacted the VA. They said, fill out this paper, come in 2 weeks and give me eval. Okay. Give me eval, talk to them, tell them everything's going on. Then they said, all right, come back in 2.5 months when the results of your eval are out. I'm like, okay. So wait the 2.5 months. And they said, okay, you have severe PTSD. I'm like, yeah, no shit. What do I do about it? Fill out this paper and this person will refer you to this doctor and we might get you in 8 months. Oh, man. I was like, you mean to tell me you guys get billions of dollars in funding every year and we're losing 22 veterans a day to suicide and I got to wait 8 months to talk to a shrink? What am I supposed to do in the meantime? I'm not in a good place right now. I might do something stupid. Well, they're like, you can pay for your own treatment, then fill out this paper, mail it to this address and fill out this form, then we might reimburse you. So I started doing that. The conventional answer was, all right, dude, just here's a bunch of pills. You can't sleep. Here's some benzos. Here's some SSRI. Here's some anti-anxiety medications. I would go in there and talk to this dude for an hour and I'd pay $280. Then he'd just give me like a bunch of pills. I'm like, I already have problems with drugs. I'm like, this is not where I want to go. And then my career took a nosedive. I got fired from my job actually because of that outburst I had. So I was living off my severance package and savings. I'm like, I'm not getting anywhere. Like, I'm going to get hooked on these medications and I'm still battling my urge to drink and smoke and do a bunch of other dumb shit. So I started looking into alternatives because I had to. I didn't have a choice.
The Stashcast is brought to you by Needle. What if you could use data and analytics to predict real estate transactions? With Needle, you can. Check it out at needle.us to learn more.
I investigated this thing called forest bathing, where you unplug from everything, leave your phone at home and all that, and go out in the woods. I started doing that a lot. And then I was talking to a friend, hey man, I got this property in the middle of the Philippines. It's been sitting dormant for about 5 years. We had a little structure built out there. It's all rotten now. I'm not really doing it. You want to just go hang out there for a little bit, simplify your life. So I went and visited the place. I'm like, yeah, I think I could do that because everything at home was gone, man. Like my ex had left. Good on her. Rightfully bless her heart. Yeah. My career was over. So I'm just sitting in this big, stupid house of all this like shadows of an old life, right? And so that's when I decided to just pull the plug. So I took my severance package and all my savings and sold all my stuff, sold the cars and the clothes and everything, sold it all. Then went out there and I decided to start my life again in the middle of the jungle. So the whole vision was to build this eco village so I can build a sustainable tourism business. Now, the native peoples of the Philippines are not the Filipinos, not the ones that look Asian. They're people called the Aita, which they look African, or the Atis. They're the original inhabitants, but they've been socially marginalized. They look like black people. So I was like, I'll just give these guys jobs. I have this idea to build this place and I want you guys to build it. So I was paying them really good wages and I had work crews out there. We didn't have power tools. So it was all machetes, chicken wire, fishing line, and saws. And that's all they had. One day I went to the market and I bought a old ratty t-shirt, a machete, some old shorts and sandals. And I just showed up. I'm like, all right, guys, I'm joining the crew. Teach me what to do. And so they're tripping out. Wait, you're our employer, but you're our trainee at the same time. Like, how's this working? And so I just started joining the crew, man. I was working with them and it was pretty hard manual labor because we have to chop down bamboo, then drag it to the ocean, which is 3 kilometers away, soak it in seawater, drag it back up the mountain another 3 kilometers, then leave it staging overnight and then build with it, and then cut everything by hand with machetes and saws to shape the bamboo, and then tie it together with fishing line. And we set up a small farm. It's very underappreciated. Being out there in the sun and pulling out rocks and tree stumps and preparing the land and fertilizing it. And that was a pretty cool experience. For me, that was really healing. I learned to speak their language. I made friends in the community. They were just tripping out. Like, this white American dude is out here with us, like out in the middle of the jungle. What's wrong with this guy? Right. But every day was a feast. After work, we'd buy a bunch of cheap beer and fish and vegetables, and the women would cook. We drink a bunch of coconut liquor and play drums. It was a great time, man. We was out there with them. Then I learned how to spearfish a bit and then fish from the line and sail. And they taught me how to hunt out in the jungle, hunting wild pigs and birds. It was super cool. That went on for about 2.5 years in total. But when my place was built, I was thinking like, all right, I need to start monetizing this. So I wanted to set up a tourism business. Then I put it on Airbnb and tourists were coming out. But I realized I wasn't really healed as I thought I was. Because in my book, I talk about having a healing experience doesn't mean you're healed. So a lot of people mistake that. Like they'll have one healing experience and think, okay, I'm better. Like, no, and it takes a lot. So I remember this tourist came out and being really super demanding and all this. So I just let him have it. I'm like, look, asshole, I take your fucking $5, shove it up your ass, get off my property. And no, there's no buses or trikes or motorcycles or taxis. You have to walk 7 kilometers to the port because you're being a dick.
Yeah.
And so I was starting to do research again into alternatives. And I found a study done by the Department of Veterans Affairs and the University of Indiana, where they put 120 veterans through controlled series of yoga classes. It was 3 times a week over the period of 6 months. And at the end of the study, they reported like better impulse control, better control of the mood, better relationships, better mind-body connection, less stress, better sleep, improved sexual relationships and all that. So I'm thinking like yoga is a place where you meet chicks. Like I didn't take it seriously as a real thing. And so I was like, all right, if I'm going to really study this, I think I'll just go where it's from. So I hired a caretaker and I packed all their bags and I went over to India. Then August of 2017, I showed up in Delhi. Then I took a flight to Dehradun airport. Then I drove 2 hours to the city of Rishikesh, which is the birthplace of yoga. Now, India is wild, man. It's peaceful, but super chaotic. It's a weird paradox. Like the vibe is super chill, but then everything around is crazy. This is why India can work the way it does. There's people everywhere and cows and monkeys and leopards and elephants and all this wild shit going on. And everybody's, oh, no problem, my friend. No, man. Yeah. I see why being there. And so I was going around to yoga schools and trying to find a school. Then it was all this crap. And I was getting ripped off too, because they're like, oh, it's just $4,000 a month. I'm like, you fucking kidding me, bro? There's cow patties outside on the street and the buildings are falling apart everywhere. And you want to charge me $4,000? Yeah,
Right.
and so I'm sitting by the Ganges River in this park called Ramjula. And this dude walks up to me. He's like, hey, my friend, what are you looking for? I thought he's trying to sell me some hashish or something. I'm like, look, bro, I'm good. I'm not trying to do that. I'm trying to sort my head out. He just laughed at me like, no, what are you looking for in you? Like, you look lost. Like you're searching for something. And I looked up and he's an older dude. Like I was 34 at the time. So I think he was about my 41, 42. And we had a conversation. I found out he used to work in banking in India. He was a pretty intelligent dude, but he gave it all up. And he just went down a spiritual path and became a monk. And so I would come down there every day and have conversations with him and talk to him about different stuff. Then after the 3rd day, I'm like, all right, I think this is my teacher. This is what I want. And after getting to know me for about a week, he invited me into his world. And I was with this group of sadhus for 3 months, man. These traveling Hindu monks. We didn't wear shoes everywhere, so we're all barefoot, right? They survived off of alms. They would beg for alms all day, and people would give them alms, and they would distribute it among each other. Or they would get food from nature, or to go around to temples, work and volunteer, and they would feed us and sleep on floors or out in the jungle. Like we're just roughing it out there, practicing yoga, like maybe 4 to 6 hours a day, between understanding the philosophy, going to different historical places, doing the practices, going through the meditations. And that was really brought me to a different level, spiritually, mentally, and emotionally, because I learned the practice of yoga as not just an exercise for soccer moms or chicks that want to look good in their Instagram photo. Like it was an actual spiritual practice where you dig deep into different parts of yourself. It all started to come out. And I went through a place of spiritual psychosis. It's interesting. The thing I learned about yoga was the postures. First, there's something called the 8 limbs of yoga, which is the yama, niyama, which is your personal conduct or your morals and value systems, and then your personal conduct. Then asana means the postures. So that's all the practices where you're doing all the movements. Then you have something called pranayama, which is the breathing or breath control. And then dhyana, and then dharani. Dhyana means like deep focus, and dharani means meditation for actual spiritual growth. And then samadhi means like your full awakening or enlightenment. And so in the West, you only get 1 to 2 parts. You get the postures,
Right.
and then people call this breath work now, where you do all these breathing practices, but it's actually called pranayama. So I learned that whole system just to a point where I learned to sit in the full lotus pose. Every time I sat down with my teacher, you have to sit in that posture. It's super uncomfortable.
Yeah.
It's super uncomfortable. When you finally get used to it, like it aligns your body energetically, and then it brings you to a different state of consciousness.
Freezing temperature is 32. So you're probably like 40 degrees.
It's cold.
Yeah.
So that was 3 times a day in the morning. Then he made me, it was one day, he made me sit inside there in Padmasana, in the river. He said, you're not moving, 1 hour, no coming out.
Wow.
And so I was like, what if I freeze? He forced me to sit in there, then use my breath to generate heat so I didn't start to freeze and shiver. He sat next to me and he wasn't even chirping about it. He was kind of laughing at me doing it, but that was a really crazy experience about breath control and how the body has latent abilities we don't tap into until we have to out of necessity, right? And so that was one of a lot of different experiences. But the main takeaway from that was that when you develop a new relationship with your body and breath, you can expedite the healing of trauma by excavating and processing emotions on a faster rate than conventional talk therapy, journaling, or stuffing everything down on medications and things like that. So the next leg of the journey was going to China. I did that for about 3.5 months. And I said, all right, this is cool. I'm all yoga out. I want something different. So let's go do whatever. So the next stop was going to a Shaolin monastery in northeastern China. So I flew into the city of Qingdao, and then I went to the place called the Jian Taigong Martial Arts Academy. And my teacher was a 32nd generation Shaolin master named Master Zhang. He was about 5'6", 160 pounds stacked. This dude wiped the floor with me without even trying. Like, I thought I had my ass beat before. Like, this guy fucking beat my ass with a smile on his face. I know he did it on purpose in the beginning to break my ego.
Yeah.
Because I'm thinking, oh, I'm this tough ex-military guy, and this little Chinese dude. I didn't know what hit me, man. Before I knew it, I had my arm all twisted up, my hands on my throat, I'm on the ground. And he's sitting there, he put his knee in my chest. He's just looking at me laughing. Like, all right, I don't know anything. Like, I don't know nothing. And so for the first month, I just had to do the same movements, the same 23 movements over and over again. I hated it. Because when you train in like China, Japan, Korea, the martial arts there is it's not an entertainment thing like in the West. You could take your kid to karate class and he has a bunch of fun and he wants to go back. Over there, this is what you need to learn. And this is the discipline you need to follow. And if you don't like it, you can go. We don't need you. So that was their attitude. And so did that for about a month. And then after the first month, I was telling him, I was getting frustrated. He knew it too. He's like, why am I doing this? He's like, you need to break your ego. Let go. And so I was just like, all right, if this is the only thing I'm going to do, then fine. I just gave up. And then he started teaching me. By month 2 and 3, I got deeper into the training and the practice. It's probably one of the hardest things I've done in my life physically. Like waking up 4 a.m., you have to run 3.5 kilometers up the hill to get your water for the day from a well. Then you bring it back. Then you do 4 hours of morning training. Then you have a lunch break for an hour. Then you do 4 hours of afternoon training. And then you have your night routines where you do meditation and Qigong or study Chinese. And then you go to bed. You do that 6 days a week. I remember I showed up there. I was about 192 pounds and I left. I was like 170.
I bet.
So the main thing I've learned from that experience was if you have anger issues and violent tendencies, mastering the power of violence through a practice to a point where you understand it fully and you're fully capable, but in a spiritual aspect where it's no longer appealing to you, it has an adverse effect. After doing that, I no longer had any kind of desires to hurt people. Even though I'm fully capable of doing it, I don't even like violence. I'd rather not even go in the direction of arguing with people. I went to Tibet next. My whole plan was to go to Tibet for 3 months, but that got cut short after 2 weeks. The Chinese authorities somehow found out that I was ex-military and I've been poking around in Tibet and talking to monks, and I got politely escorted out of the country. Yeah, all right, I guess it's the airport. Yeah. Then the last leg of the journey was being stuck on another island in the Philippines during the pandemic, where I joined a troop of spear fishermen. Since the pandemic had shut a lot of things down and movement and travel were restricted, a lot of people are starving. In the island I was living on, there was these guys that would spearfish almost every day. They would go out for 12 hours from morning to night or all night, from 10 at night until 6 in the morning, just shooting fish. So I started hanging out with those guys to learn spearfishing and freediving and further breath control. That was a super cool and intense experience too. Because they'll drop down almost 100 feet, post up on the bottom of the ocean, murk a fish, drag it back to the surface, throw it on the boat, and do that again for 3-4 hours straight. Then take a lunch break. They gut one of the fish and they have a grill on the boat. They grill it up, slam a bunch of beers, smoke cigarettes, and then after an hour, they go back and do it again for another 4 hours.
Wow.
Yeah, man. And these guys are banking down 100 feet, no problem, without even breaking a sweat.
That's amazing.
It's just body and breath control. I did that for the entire, almost 2 years of the pandemic. And then I wrote my book. And then after the pandemic, it took me a while to be comfortable or systemize and release this stuff. So I finished my book in 2023. And then this year in 2025, I decided to release it and get the message out there. I just want to help people. If I can help people and they're looking for alternative solutions to mental health stuff and they can benefit from my experience, then why go through all of this stuff and learn it if you're not going to share it? It doesn't really make a lot of sense. Appreciate you having me.
So maybe for the listeners at home, if you could give us a quick recap of who you are and what you do and why we're here today, we'll get rolling.
Yeah, sure. My name's Rob. I'm a U.S. Navy veteran. I was diagnosed with PTSD and conventional methods were not really available due to system failures. So I was forced to explore alternatives, which took me on this journey from living in the jungles of the Philippines to studying yoga in the Himalayas with a Vedic Hindu monk, to going to China and studying martial arts in a Shaolin temple, to going to Tibet. It culminated with living on a remote island during the pandemic, and I joined a troop of spearfishermen. I found my own way to manage PTSD through mindfulness and everything I learned. And now my mission is to share that with others who are suffering from trauma, PTSD, or mental health issues that they don't want to depend on conventional solutions to solve.
You were in the military, you got out, you had some traumas directly and indirectly that you experienced from that. And then you said, leave the Western world and go to an island. And you went and built an eco resort. I was like, well, first of all, that's amazing. That could be a story in and of itself. But then you're like, no, I think I want to go study yoga. And so you went to India. You studied yoga there. Once you had gotten your fill, you then went to China and studied with the Shaolin monks. My question was, from each of those experiences, what were you seeking and what did you get out of it? Did they end up being the same thing?
I think in the beginning, I didn't really know what I was looking for. I was just going through, I guess, a quarter life crisis, early 30s. So I was just going there to learn about myself and just to go on an adventure and just see what happens. I didn't really have this specific, I'm going to go accomplish this and this textbook predicted thing. I just thought the experience would be cool. That's when I learned the lessons and the wisdom from each one. The biggest takeaway is whenever you set your expectations about how something is supposed to be when you don't know it, you ruin it. In a way, if you're looking for something that's a bit higher level in terms of your healing or an experience that's going to shape you, you can't go in it with an expectation of what you have now because you don't know. That's why you're seeking it, right? Because you don't know what it has to offer. My general attitude was, this seems like a cool experience. I might find some healing, or it might be a total waste of time, and I might not make it back. I don't know.
My question then would be, what's your take? People are like, set goals. And with setting goals, you have expectations around that of achieving.
Yes, because if it's something you've never experienced before, how can you set the right expectations around it when you don't even know? If I've been to a steak restaurant, and I've been to hundreds of steak restaurants, I know what to expect because I've experienced that already.
Sure.
I know they should have the tablecloth a certain color and give me a certain knife and the steak should taste. But if it's like, hey, I'm going to go live in the jungles of the Philippines, I've never done that before. So how am I going to set my expectation around something? I have no idea how it's supposed to play out. So when you get into these assumptive thoughts based on your logic of where you are, and that gives people a lot of trouble because you're basing everything on where you are, but you're trying to get somewhere you've never been, carrying the thinking and expectations of where you are, which is completely inaccurate. So there's no point in even doing that, right? Like, let's say you were traveling to Japan for the first time and all you saw in the States was anime.
You would end up being disappointed because it didn't meet the expectations that you had for it, because people are actually real and not anime.
I think we know where we're going with that.
So I guess getting back on topic,
Yeah.
what were some of the tools that you found to help you deal with the challenges that you faced through your life?
Well, in terms of my healing journey, a lot of the tools, skills I learned in the military really came into play because being deployed into foreign countries and knowing how to deal with the locals, knowing how to convert assets, knowing how to frame yourself as a person that can integrate into the community and provide value to them. All those skills came in handy being in those situations that I was in. And I think a lot of it is just being open to learn about people who think that you're better than them, which is a really crazy thing, like, especially being in the Philippines, like being with the marginalized community of the native inhabitants. They have a view of Westerners as this superior race, and they feel like they're inferior to Westerners. So for them, having a Westerner come into their world and say, hey, I want to learn from you guys, it really shocks their system in a way. It turns the whole dynamic where it gives them a lot of confidence and it makes them see themselves in a different way.
So talk about that a little bit more, because you said that you went and in building would you call it an eco resort or eco tourism
Village, I
destination?
guess.
Village.
Tourism destination. Like, it was by no means of the standards of a resort.
Okay. Yeah.
But when I went out there, I understood I was going into a marginalized community that has a very colorful history with outsiders, right? Because the Aita or the Atis, they're genetically similar to the Papua New Guinea people or the people of the native Australians, the Aboriginals. So they look like they could be African. They have dark skin, they have curly hair. When the Spanish came in and conquered them, they'd have influence from Chinese, the Malays, the Arabs. They were put on the very bottom of society. Going into their community as this foreigner, there's three things. You can be an unwanted guest, someone with a giant ATM sign on his forehead, or an opportunity. I said, out of those three, if I present myself as an opportunity, I'd be likable. They'd have a reason to let me hang around. All right, I'll give these people jobs. And they're experts at building with bamboo, hunting, fishing, farming, foraging in the jungle. They know how to do all that stuff since they're kids. So I hired them to build up my property. And after about 3.5 weeks to a month of watching them work and trying to supervise things, I'm just like, wow, this looks pretty fun. This is some man work. Everyone just does everything in flip-flops. The only tools you really have are machete, fishing line, chicken wire, pliers, shovels, garden hose, pickaxes, and that's about it. Like, we didn't have many power tools. We didn't have electricity source when we first started. There's no power. It was super hard manual labor. For me, being on a team and doing something physical and just being out in nature and unplugged from the system in a way and simplifying things, it did a lot for me from where I was at mentally and emotionally.
Mm-hmm. And how did your team start to view you? You put them in this position of, hey, you're my employer, but my employer is also my grunt. How did you see them change?
A lot of it is like they view Westerners as born with a silver spoon in our mouth. And compared to them, we actually are, because urban poverty in America is still luxury compared to the third world. You have 4 walls and you're not exposed to the elements, and you have heating and air conditioning and Wi-Fi, carpet floor and running water, and you have the option for hot and cold water, and you have access to food every single day. You're doing better than 95% of the world. Some days you're not going to eat at all. Like your house falls apart when there's a storm, so you have to forage and get little steel panels to build your roof. You don't have running water, so you have to go down to a stream and haul your water up to your little structure in this big bucket that you use to brush your teeth or wash dishes. When you run out, you got to do it again. Or if you're lucky, you're going to run a pump from the stream to your house to have unfiltered creek water coming in, and that's your cooking water, your shower, and everything. In your house, it's just one bamboo structure, and everybody's in one room, and then you might have a kitchen. And outside, maybe 15, 20 feet away, you have an outhouse, which is just a cement block with a hole in the ground. So then that's a bit different than, oh, well, I don't live in a nice neighborhood. I'm in poverty in America. I think for me, having the attitude to go down into that and be with those people, it really tripped them out. They're like, you could just go rent a nice big villa, or you could get an apartment and have people waiting on you. Like you can get maids and servants and drivers and all that, but you're out here with us in the middle of the jungle. Like you're a crazy white dude. What's wrong with you? In the beginning, they were a bit amused by it, but they saw me working with them and really trying to grind with them and keep up and learn. I eventually got respected by them because it's quite different than walking around an Amazon warehouse and putting stuff in boxes or standing there and taking orders and drive through. This is really out there in the jungle, barefoot, machetes, tools, handsaws, and manual labor.
Yeah. It reminds me of that meme that you've got two or three different portraits of a boss. And one is the guy in the back whipping the soap pullers in front, whereas what you were doing was servant leadership. It sounds like where you're right in there, shoulder to shoulder with them. Yeah. I think that's really powerful stuff.
That's the only way that people are going to respect you, right? Because you can't lead people if you're not actually with them to a point where they see you as a leader. People don't realize the difference between a boss and a leader is people follow a leader, but they obey a boss.
Yeah.
I obey because of a fear of a consequence, not because I'm genuinely inspired to. I don't do what this guy says. Yes, sir, he's going to fire me. Then I won't have food and I'll lose my income. So I'll do it. Versus a leader is like, all right, I really enjoy this. I'm inspired by this. Let's do it. How can I help? If someone just says, okay, now you're the new section manager, everybody's not going to look at you like a leader. They're just going to look at you like, okay, you got promoted. You got to prove that you're a leader.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people miss that part.
How have you seen through your journey the ability to do that?
In the military, there's something we call the DAD model, DAD. First is demonstrate, right? So I'm going to do the thing that I need help with first. As I'm doing it, you see me dedicated to it. The second thing I'm going to ask for assistance. And then when I ask you for assistance and we're doing it together, I'm going to direct you. So that's the model you can follow to becoming a leader. First, you do the thing that you want people to do and show dedication to it and competence in it. The second is they see you doing it, you ask for assistance and you get them to assist you. After then, you're in a position to direct. A lot of people are going to want to skip a step in between that and just go straight to direct.
Yeah.
And think that, okay, everyone is going to respect me as a leader just because of my position. It doesn't work that way. You got to put in your sweat equity first before people see you like that.
I think one of my biggest challenges personally is that I'm really good at doing it. I'm okay at directing, but oftentimes I get pulled back down into just doing it because I don't really know how to properly ask for assistance because I'm just like, I just got to get it done. And I think it might be easier when you're doing, say, physical labor, for instance. But when you're doing things more in the abstract, like building workflows, booking appointments, or cold calling, I've always struggled with asking and not sounding like an asshole.
It's just really a point of like, people are going to be invested in you if you're invested in them. So if you invest your time into showing someone how to do something because they can help you do it and you can train them in a skill, that opens the door for them investing loyalty back into you, right? And so if you're pressed by performance and everything's on your shoulders, depending on your business model, that might be all right. But if you're working with people and you're trying to grow and scale a company, for example, doesn't work. People have to know that, number one, you're invested in it. It inspires them to be invested in it too. I remember being at UCLA, one of my professors said, I'll always support a missionary over a mercenary.
What does that mean? Elaborate.
Well,
please.
basically, if you have a mission because it creates some kind of positive impact, people will support the mission rather than just the mercenary of, look, I'm going to be a mercenary and I'll join this army just for the pay. That's why they're viewed as disposable. Exactly. Yeah. That's why a soldier and a mercenary, they're viewed two different ways by people. So if you're on a mission to do something because you're mission driven in your business, if you want to create an impact to make startups last past the seed phase, or you're trying to help professionals with mental health, or you're creating this really cool automation system that'll benefit small businesses or whatever it is, and people are with, that's the thing that you can ride on to become a leader. If it's all just about the money, then it's missing an element to really glue people together with that higher level of emotion and consciousness.
So I want to sew this into what you're doing, but I have another follow-up question. One of the things I struggle with is that I hesitate to ask people to do things because I feel like that it might build resentment in them. How do you overcome that?
If they're on your team, you'd have to really look at the position they're in. If I'm hiring somebody to be my assistant and I'm paying you a salary,
sure,
then why would I have a problem asking you to do the thing that I'm paying you to do? You can't be afraid to inconvenience people if you're in the position to do that and they're voluntarily showing up for that. If the person is not in a position for that, then yeah, you would feel guilty about it, because if somebody's not on your payroll and you're asking them for help and they're investing their time in something with no compensation, then yeah, it would be weird.
How do you do it with remote workers?
Long story short is that if you're in a position, you have to leverage that to get people to move. If we have an agreement, like if there's a remote worker and you say, all right, I'm going to pay you $3,000 a month and these are your responsibilities, so I'm going to make full use of the time to get my money's worth. Because on the other end of the spectrum, if you're paying somebody and they're not really doing anything, just making sure you're in a position to dictate and then taking full advantage of the position that you're in by directing people to do the things that they voluntarily are doing in exchange for the benefit you're providing them.
I guess sewing this into what you're doing, how are you helping business leaders and startup founders to level up?
Everyone's looking at things from an upward trajectory. They're looking at running faster and longer, but they're not checking the rocks in their shoes. And this is the thing about trauma is whenever you have emotional trauma, it's going to affect your decision-making process. Because we make decisions on an emotional level first, and then we justify them with logic. That's how our brain works. The emotion of hunger is driving humans to food production. If people weren't hungry, we wouldn't have a reason to grow thousands of miles of crops, have factories that make different foods. Everything is driven by the emotion of hunger first, and then logic assembles itself on the aftermath of the emotion. When you're in a leadership position and you're driven by emotions you either A, don't really know you have, B, they're unconsciously influencing your decision-making process, or C, they're bursting out because you don't know how to manage them, you're going to make stupid decisions that aren't going to be in anybody's benefit, particularly your own and how you affect people. I can say this because I've been that guy. I was in a leadership position with crazy traumatic emotions, and I made some very horrible decisions based on those, which cost me what? It cost me a huge project with a company I was working for, which could have made us about $700,000. That was right down the tubes because of the stupid things I did based on the emotions I didn't know how to handle. Speak from both ends of this, but being on the shit end of things and being on the good end of things is that if you don't dial in how your emotions are affecting you or how you're managing your stress or how they're showing up in your life, they're like an unconscious thing that will inevitably make their way to the surface anyway. Mm-hmm. You might as well lock yourself in a room and deal with them before they deal with you first. Give you an example, right?
Yeah.
There's a startup founder and he's super stressed at home because he has a bad relationship with his partner. He's carrying an underlying sense of anger and frustration. And one of his team members makes a silly mistake. He gets mad at them. All of that pent up frustration is likely to exit in inappropriate situations. The frame of authority and respect is gone because you're getting hyper emotional and blowing things out of proportion. And then your team doesn't respect you. And when your team doesn't respect you, but they still want to work for you, that means they're just using you for a paycheck. They might just do the bare minimum. I like this. I don't respect them. I just need the job. So I'll do the bare minimum. They'll need to be micromanaged because they're not forward thinking, because they don't support you, because they don't like you, because you made them feel bad. And you made them feel bad because you feel bad. This is one of many ways it can show up. In terms of helping startup founders, leaders, and people in these positions where they have to deal with a lot of stress, if you don't manage your emotions, they're going to manage you unconsciously, and you're going to make stupid decisions that are not going to be to your benefit at all.
Mm-hmm. Is this what you're talking about when you're talking about the hyperassociation?
Yeah. So hyperassociation is, let's look at the word like something that's a bit more common and digestible for people. Being triggered, right? What a trigger actually is, it's a part of your mind returning to a mental and emotional state that's based on an original trauma that happened, that's irrelevant to the situation or inappropriate to the situation. Give you an example. If I was bullied as a kid and people were calling me unintelligent and stupid all the time, right? And then somebody makes an innocent joke and takes a little jab at me, and then I want to fight them, I'm not actually mad at just them. I'm mad at them and the 50 other people in my life that I have an unsettled score.
Yeah.
Maybe it's the teenage version of you that got bullied because you had big glasses and goofy shoes. Maybe it's the 5-year-old version of you that was getting hit with a belt by your dad because you spilled the coffee on the floor. Whatever, we reassociate with parts of ourselves that are reliving that trauma that happened at the time that we never dealt with. So we fragment shift back to that version of ourselves in those moments. And then we create disproportionate overreactions to situations that happen that mirror those things.
How do you break those?
It's not really a matter of overcoming, because whenever you look at the idea of victory and defeat within yourself, you're the winner and you're the loser. So what I mean to say by that is, if we don't take the attitude of overcome, we're going to take the attitude of integrate. What does that hurt, mad 16-year-old version of you want to say? Where's the audience that he needed? What does he need to get off of his chest? Where's the attention that he needed? What is that 5-year-old kid who got hit by the belt by dad? What is he feeling? When you learn to revisit these parts of yourself, to reassemble those fragments, you're able to consciously release the emotions behind those experiences. And when you do that, you deflate the emotion.
Yeah, because you take the power from it.
Exactly. And deflating the emotion over a long enough timeline means that the reaction power is less and less until it's gone. So rather than being this big 250-pound prison guy with muscles and tattoos that just wants to jump at everybody, it turns back into this skinny little twerp where it doesn't have the power to hijack your thinking. If that makes sense.
The saying that I've had so many times in my life is, the road to hell is paved with the best intentions. You do something, it ends up blowing up in your face. That is not what I was trying to accomplish here. That is not what I was trying to do. But the powers that be in that given situation say, no, you did something wrong, no matter what your intention was. And so as a result, here's a punishment. It's too late. And that can become a trigger for future things, because just because you intended to do something and you had this positive outcome in mind doesn't mean that everybody else is going to interpret that way.
The thing you got to understand is people in general, that intentions are meaningless.
Say more.
Meaning that if I have the intention to do something good without the wisdom of understanding what I'm doing, I can actually do something very dangerous. For example, someone wants to help you out, so they pump gas in your car, but they put diesel fuel in your tank.
Yeah.
And now your engine is totally clogged and you have to get it fixed by a mechanic.
Right.
The reason that whole situation happened is they acted without foresight and wisdom.
That's a good example.
There's a saying in Buddhism that ignorance and compassion are very dangerous when mixed together.
Yeah.
Like, we see this all the time. Let's say there's a man on the street and he looks really helpless and he's hungry and he's begging for your change, and you feel bad, so you give him $5, and then he immediately turns around and he goes and buys some highly addictive drug. Well, his entire life and his ability to be that addict is based on people's sympathy and how he tricks them. into thinking that he's going to try to get some food or get his life together. But he's actually going to take that and bring it straight to the dealer and get some little bag of whatever and continue his life on the street.
You've enabled that negative behavior because you were feeling, hey, I want to help this person out. You just further enabled it.
Yeah, you further perpetuated the system. And it happens a lot of times, man, because when we try to be compassionate without foresight and wisdom, we end up making a lot of unwise decisions. Okay, let's say in the military, right? You're new and you're going to your first foreign country. They want to take you out to a bar and get you really drunk, and hopefully you're going to meet a beautiful young lady and have a good time. And what that does, and maybe it seems innocent, but it sets the framework that your expectation is now, in order to meet women, I have to get drunk, because that's the standard you have. So in order to meet and then have any interaction with a woman, I need to be out drinking and get completely drunk, and then I can try to recreate the situation. That means you're only going to put yourself in situations where you're meeting people who are also getting drunk, who probably have a ton of issues and baggage and are not good people to be around, to connect with energetically and spiritually and emotionally on something real, because they're just running away from their problems too. Now, the guy that took you out there is a 19-year-old kid in whatever exotic country you're in. He had the best intentions, but now he set a standard in your mind. So now when you get back to the States, like talking for personal experience, you have this preconceived notion that in order to meet anybody, you have to get blackout drunk in a certain environment. And that's the only way you can do it.
Mm-hmm.
It started with good intention, but look what happened.
How did you, I guess first you identified it, right? And then you took active steps to be able to diffuse or deflate that situation on.
In terms of changing a habit, or we're going to go back to the original topic of, okay, how do I avoid making bad decisions that have negative consequences, even though I have good intentions?
Mm-hmm.
The immediate first step is don't act based on a feeling. When you act impulsively based simply on a feeling, you're not thinking things through. You ask 99% of the people that are locked up in jail, they're probably there because they acted on a feeling in the moment. They didn't think things through. So you have to be able to not let the emotion hijack your thinking. And number two, before you make a decision to act, you must consider the consequences of what's really happening by taking a detached view from things. Detached meaning you're not thinking from the lens of your own emotions, but you're thinking from the lens of observing objective reality.
So I guess it's emotional intelligence.
Yes. Just because you feel something, you don't have to act on it. You can observe that feeling and sit with it, but not act on it immediately. Hey, I'm feeling a sense of compassion and pity for this man. Before I reach for my wallet, what really happened?
Right.
What are his habits like? If I give him this $20, what's he going to do with it?
So you wrote a book on this. Talk to me about that.
The book is called Unfiltered Wisdom, and it catalogs my whole journey and process. It was like an unpacking of all the things that I went through when I was in the middle of the pandemic. My tourism business was shut down. I was on a remote island. Didn't have much to do all day. I started going out with spear fishermen and applying the yoga and breathing techniques and doing a lot of meditation. And I talked to a friend and said, hey, you should write a book about what you're doing. And I sat down and it just came to me and it assembled itself in my head. And it took me about a year to get it all out there in a rough draft. Basically, the book is about how we relate to trauma and how we relate to our emotions in the aftermath of a traumatic experience, and then what to do to reassemble those broken parts of ourselves and move forward as a patched up version of ourselves. One thing I relate in my book is that physical injuries are very visible. Right? Like if you had a Ducati and you were going 150 miles down the highway and you got in a wreck and you somehow survived, everybody would know that something happened. Like you'd be full of bandages and crutches and casts.
Walk with a limp the rest of your life.
It's very visible. But emotional injuries are not visible. Well, we have them, man. People have them bad. We don't even know. We don't even know because we can't see, and it's not something that we talk about. When you have these invisible injuries, you're not going to heal back to normal. The same way if you broke your leg in 16 places and you somehow get it set up by a doctor, you might be able to walk again, but you're not going to be that star track athlete you were when you were 16.
Right.
It's not going to happen, like, especially if you start getting older, right? So the whole idea is how to reassemble the broken parts of yourself through systems, processes, and mindsets, practices, and just wisdom I learned in my journey. And I put it together in the 250 some odd page books, depending on where you read it and how big it is and all that. It just sums up the things that I learned. So the idea really is, number one, you have to admit to yourself that I have an emotional injury.
They say the first step is admitting you have a problem.
And a lot of us have a hard time admitting that to ourselves.
Yeah.
I have these emotional injuries. And then you have to figure out, okay, these are the events. And the next thing you're going to have to learn is emotional intelligence. What does that even mean? How do I connect with these feelings and honestly understand them to a point where they're not hijacking my thinking and I'm okay with acknowledging that I have them? Which is very difficult because in American culture, especially as men, we don't talk about our emotions. You ball them up, shove them down, and get a bottle and drink them away. At least that's how it was in my generation. Learning emotional intelligence is a very important skill for men because we're taught to be disconnected from a young age, right?
Rub some dirt on it. You're fine. Gone.
So learning to say, okay, these things happen to me and I feel this way about it. I feel sad and upset. I feel angry. I feel disappointed. I feel hurt. And now that you're able to understand that, okay, I have emotions and it makes me human and it's okay, the next skill to learn is emotional maturity. How am I going to manage these things now? How am I going to communicate them? How am I going to interact with people knowing that these are there? And this emotional maturity is key in relationships of any kind, especially if you're a startup founder, you're a person that is in a leadership position, if you're a husband or a wife, or even a boyfriend or a girlfriend. In any kind of human relationship, the way you manage your emotions will make or break that whole relationship. And I'm willing to gamble 99% of the reasons why people fail at relationships is rooted in emotional maturity and intelligence. My girlfriend wants to spend quality time with me, but I feel like she's being demanding because I'm too busy playing. But when she wanted my time, I was too emotionally unintelligent to acknowledge that. I'm too wrapped up in my own head. Emotional maturity is recognizing your own emotions and recognizing the emotions in others and how to manage situations around that.
What have been some of the techniques that you found to be able to successfully manage, once you've identified it, once you've admitted you have a problem, how do you then effectively cope with it, deflate it, and deal with it?
So the easiest way to do this is through somatic experiencing. What somatic experiencing means is experiencing the motion as a sensation in the body, fully connecting with the bodily sensation. If you look at Indian medical science or Chinese medicine, they have a map of where emotions reside in the body and how they affect different organ systems, right? For example, sadness and grief reside in the lungs. Notice a person is sad, they hunch over, right? They're down, disappointed, so their lungs are collapsed because of the heavy energy of sadness in their lungs. Reside in the solar plexus, right near the heart. That's why we say we're brokenhearted. We have this sense of rage in our hearts, meaning the center of our nervous system where this emotion resides is near the heart. Or if we say, oh, this is disgusting, it makes me want to vomit, that means that the emotional stimulus is causing a physical disruption in your digestive system. So when you learn somatic experiencing, you tune into the body to experience the emotion fully without any logical inhibitors. I can go straight into my grief, my sadness, my anger, my pain, into my body and fully experience it. That's the most efficient way to deflate it because when you directly experience it, it has a path out through the conscious mind. That emotion can be processed and released quickly because you're giving it your full attention. They have a lot of techniques for this in yoga. They have a lot of techniques for this in the Chinese practice of Qigong. And they have a lot of techniques for this in the practice of mindful meditation. The idea is learning to experience your emotions fully without any logical shield or story around them. And then use breathing practices and energetic techniques to release these things. or deflate consciously. And it gets right out of the way. And if you do it on a regular basis, you constantly deflate them, your physiology will actually change and your relationship with your emotions changes. But to answer your question, it's through somatic experiencing.
It's fascinating.
Because even think about the idea, we have these euphemisms, these sayings in English that relate emotions to bodily sensations, right?
Sure.
Hey, get off my back.
Yeah.
You're a pain, it makes me sick. Linguistically points at the idea that emotions have physiological effects on the body.
But then there's no further pursuit of that, at least in my experience. Yet there hasn't been a lot of, okay, now let's connect that and then let's identify it and then diffuse it.
Yeah. It's not a thing in Western culture.
If somebody's interested in reaching out, getting in touch with you, learning more about your practice, what's the best way to do that?
So I have a website. It's unfiltered-wisdom.com. And on there, you can find my book. I'm working on getting it on Amazon. So once that's up, it's going to be on my website. You can reach out through my website and my email, info@unfiltered-wisdom.com. But if you're a startup founder, an entrepreneur, a person in leadership, a father, your husband, a wife, if you're somebody that has trauma and you know it's having a negative effect on your life, and you're not trying to shove a bunch of pills down your throat, hoping it'll get better, and you want to do some actual work on it, then I might be able to help. My methods are unconventional, but been effective for me and people that have the same attitude that I do. So if you're serious about change and you want to try something different, then I might be able to help you.
Rob, I really appreciate your time today. Thank you so much. I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.
That's it for the Stashcast. Subscribe, share, and stay ahead in commercial real estate and prop tech. See you next time.